Welcome to this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls series on wine, food and travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. For the next weeks, we will be focusing on a dozen trophy-winning wineries from the competitions that took place in Verona at the start of Vinitaly in early April. The winning wines are without doubt some of the very best that Italy has to offer. What I'm most interested in discovering are the stories behind the bottles, learning about the wines themselves, of course, and also about the people who make them, where they're from, what they eat, how they live. It's a fascinating journey that will take us all across Italy, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. I'm delighted to have as my guest today, Michael Garner, wine writer, judge, consultant, and importer. Michael is the acclaimed co-author of Barolo, Tar and Roses, which came out in 1990, and his second book, Amarone and the Fine Wines of Verona, in 2017. Michael is also the co-owner of Italian wine specialists Trio Wines with business partner Paul Merritt. And actually, like me, Michael lives and works in beautiful Devon, which is something of a surprising coincidence. Good morning, Michael. It's a beautiful day down here on the Exe estuary. How is it with you today? Tell us where you are.
It's just the same. I live in mid-Devon, not all that far from Dartmoor, and we have a glorious clear blue sky. I'm sitting with my office door open, enjoying the temperatures, and yeah, it's a great place to be when the weather's good, Devon. It's so peaceful and so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've been here for over 40 years in Topsham, and when, like you, I go away often, and it's just always a nice place to come back to.
Oh, isn't it just? I can never wait. I mean, particularly when I go up to London, I just can't wait to get out of the city and back to the peace and quiet of rural Devon, because I live in a tiny little village, miles from anywhere, really. Only 25 houses here. And so I'm used to very tranquil circumstances.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice.
Great, a very peaceful environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Michael, in addition to writing about wine and selling wine, you're often a judge in important competitions. For example, for Decanter magazine, and you've been a judge at 5-star Wines at Vinitaly.
That's correct, yeah.
I just wanted to ask you generally, for both wine producers and for we consumers, how important are such wine competitions?
That's a really good question. People seem to set great store by them, and I can understand why that should be the case. Producers want recognition for their wines, and that recognition often will come in the form of hopefully some sort of acclaim from so-called wine experts and pundits. The consumer also looks to the array of medals that a wine picks up or the scores it may achieve in some magazine as an indication of quality and value often. So I think, yes, these things have their place, certainly. And they're also great fun to take part in from a personal point of view. I really enjoy them. And I often think they're very good forums for an exchange of views, which is so important in our trade, to know what other people think of wines and to be able to express and exchange your own opinions with other like-minded people. So they're great. They're a great venue for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think particularly when consumers can do more than just go on a numerical score, but actually read a description of why a wine or has been given a particular score or accolade. I've been interviewing the winners of this year's 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls competition to try to get the story behind the bottles.
Sure.
So it's more than just, as I say, a score. You've actually judged at 5-star Wines at Vinitaly. Why is this an important competition?
I've not done it for a few years. I was supposed to this year, but unfortunately I got food poisoning just before the
what a shame.
Before the competition. So I had to cry off at the last moment. Prior to that, obviously, the pandemic had prevented me from going over. It's a competition I particularly like. For the one of the main reasons is the way that panels are put together for five-star wines. Because on one panel, you've got, say, a journalist like myself, you've got a winemaker, you've got a sommelier, and someone else. So you've got a really good mix of opinions. And that, I think, is great, because they're very good. They organize panels in that way. So I really like tasting for five-star wines. Yeah, it's a good one. And of course, you get to meet judges from different countries with different cultures, and see how their reactions to wine can differ from your own. So again, a great place to exchange values.
Yes, actually, I can recall judging myself at the Banco d'Assaggio in Torgiano many years ago.
As well.
And again, it was that same sort of mix. I was an international judge, but the Italian point of view of what they looked for in wines. And then a winemaker could identify faults or virtues that perhaps I was less aware of. So that technical side. So I think Five Stars does that same thing.
They've really nailed it from that point of view, because you get the point of view of a sommelier as well, whose point of view is rather different from mine.
Absolutely.
He's looking first and foremost at what food this wine will go with, etc., what you can serve it with, whereas I'd be looking for other issues. The winemaker, as you say, would be looking at another aspect of it. So you get a 360 view. For wines, for five-star wines, which is, I think, a good recommendation for the consumer in particular. Because it's a wine that's been looked at from every angle.
Michael, I know you as an author. You were writing your book around the same time I was writing The Wine Roads of Italy.
Apparently,
and I remember Barolo, Tar and Roses, published in 1990.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's let's just turn back the clock a bit, because such a well-known area as Le Langhe and the Barolo wine hills. We're one of the great areas of Italy now. 30 years ago, it wasn't yet as recognized as
nowhere near, Mark. It was still an area. I've always believed that it's always produced great wines, always. But back then, the British trade press used to slate Barolo something terrible, and I leapt to the defense of an underdog in my classic sort of English manner. I needed a cause, and there it was. Barolo, I thought, was a fantastic cause, because I remember the sort of the genesis of the idea, if you like, Mark. It was my first trip to Piemonte, which must have happened close on 40 years ago, at a time when Barolo was not highly regarded. And I remember one incident in particular, being in the cellars of Giovanni Conterno's winery, before they moved to where they are now, but the old one back at San Giacomo. And I tasted Monfortino 71, straight from the barrel.
Iconic wine.
And I just couldn't believe how good it was. And no one else was really recognizing how good it was, apart from a few people. But in the UK, these wines were not highly regarded at all. So I thought, I've got to tell the world about these wines,
Well, quite, and you're right. It was great wines were being produced, but they weren't fetching the prices that the great Burgundies. And I remember meeting producers around that same era as well. Bruno Ceretto, for example, who was very eager that the wines would gain a recognition, and it's partly through books such as yours and through some and wine importers that have really helped to spread that word. Now, it's interesting you mentioned the Monfortino, because that was also a time when there was a transition between tradition and more modern styles, with Conterno, of course, fiercely being in the Cappello Sommerso.
He certainly was,
yeah. So you were able to sort of give an overview of this exciting moment of transition, which is still, in place, and there's still traditionalists, still more modern styles.
That's absolutely the case. So it was a really exciting time, and it was perfect timing. And that was sheer coincidence. I didn't recognize the full implications of it back then. I just wanted to sort of, as I said, get the message out there to the world that here was a great wine that was not being viewed as such, and that was, as you rightly say, sort of at the time, sort of selling for peanuts in terms of its true worth. So that mix of the old school, and then we got quite close to some of the modernists back then, people like Roberto Boezio, Elio Altare. And at the same time, I spent a lot of time with Giovanni Canterno, Bartolo Mascarello, even Beppe Rinaldi's father, who was quite old back then, but I remember him as well. I remember spending some time with him, and there were these fascinating differences in the style, the old traditional style and the modern style. And for me, it's interesting to note that the most prized style these days has gone back towards the very traditional.
Yeah.
If you think of someone like a producer like Castello di Verduno, is that right? No, Gibi Borlotto, Commendatore Borlotto. Their Monvigliero is just made from foot-trodden grapes.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
In the old way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the Barolos that fetches the highest price, as Monfortino does, because Roberto Quintero has followed in his father's footsteps and maintains the classical old-style production method. So it's interesting to see that tastes have gone back towards that sort of
yes, into the big botte aging and
absolutely
using the indigenous yeast as well.
Totally.
Yeah. Actually, the landscape itself, though, in those 40 years, Michael, has really changed. I remember that, we didn't have such incredibly intensive viticulture. The Barolo, the Langhe Hills were still, mixed farms because people couldn't make a huge living. And so the small growers had to grow a bit of this and a bit of that, as well as some vines to sell, grapes to sell.
That's very true. I remember talking to, who's the guy? Enrico Scavino, the guy who makes Brick del Fiasco, etc. We spent a bit of time with him, and I remember actually sort of helping him harvest the 1987 vintage. Paul and I were there for that, and he had to sort of fit it in between harvesting peaches and harvesting his other other fruits. So there was a lot of mixed farming back there, and it's almost become a monoculture now in the area. There are vines everywhere you look, whereas at one time they would have been planted only in the top quality sites, although the better sites were always there for vines. And the expansion of the vineyards has seen some sites included which perhaps once upon a time would not have been considered as vineyard areas. So there is that. You have to bear that sort of thing in mind. It's an inevitable consequence of the success.
Of course. Now, I'm wondering if one of the attractions to you of being in this beautiful area has been the food as well. Is that a big part of your life? I love the foods of Langhe and going to Barolo and being with wine producers and eating foods that are so in tune with the landscape.
Absolutely, totally. But I think, again, I'm sure you'd agree, Mark, that's changed a lot. When Paul and I first started researching the book back in the sort of mid-'80s, you had these huge, great meals with course after course after course. And the cooking style in the Langhe has evolved in that period. It's become much lighter. Because people's habits and lifestyles change. I remember talking to people about for breakfast, they'd go down to the local village square and they'd have mugs of tripe soup and glasses of dolcetto for breakfast.
Right.
Because they needed all those calories because they were out there farming all day long, and the lifestyle was governed by the work that they have to do, hard physical labor. And that has changed now, obviously, because it's because of monoculture, because the spread of vineyards and things are organized very differently now, and there's a much sort of lighter approach to Langhe cuisine. It's done with a lighter hand than it used to. So it's changed, but it's still as interesting as ever. I can never separate food and wine. You can't. It's a mistake to do so. One makes the other taste better, and that's as far as it goes. So they go hand in hand. So it's great to see local wines and local cuisines and how they blend together and how they interact. It's one of the more fascinating aspects.
It is. And as you say, I think it's absolutely essential with Italian wine, perhaps even more than wines from other countries. Italian wines are food wines, and that's how Italians drink them.
They are a part of the fabric of their everyday lives just as much as food is, and they're inseparable. And I think, things are changing now. I hope they are. But for a long time, a lot of wine in the UK was drunk outside of meal times. I think it still is. And the Italians have never been able to get their head around this, and in a way, they're right. I mean, I can think of better aperitifs than wine, and there are better things at slaking your thirst than wine. Wine in Italy is there to go with the meal.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
I think that's seeing wine in its true context, really. I mean, it lends itself quite well to, consumption as an aperitif or just as a casual sort of social beverage. But when it does, when it enters that area, it's competing with all sorts of other drinks.
Of course.
Beers, spirits, the lot. So it's got a specific focus in Italy. And that's one of the things I love about Italy, the way that these things are viewed.
Yeah. And of course, the regionality of Italy as well, the way how you move from, the difference between the different dishes in Asti than in Alba. But when you moved across to Verona for your second book, again, it was not only a completely different style of wine, Amarone and the great wines of the Valpolicella, but also a whole different landscape, a different world, a different cuisine. So,
absolutely. Again, very much a time of change, though. If we think of, you mentioned Amarone, a lot of people perhaps don't recognize the fact that Amarone is a wine with a history dating back no further than the end of the Second World War. So, some 60, 70 years ago, really. And it's only recently, I would say, in the last couple of decades that it's exploded in the way it has done commercially. And that tends to take away, I think, from the main focus of the vineyards of Valpolicella, which is Valpolicella itself.
Sure, a wonderful wine.
It's probably my, I think I've gone on record as saying it's my desert island wine. A really good glass of Valpolicella as an everyday beverage is unbeatable for me. It's so adaptable, so versatile. And again, it's from a very particular landscape. The way the vineyards of Verona are organized, they're all these north-south running valleys from the Lesini Mountains down towards the Adige, the plain of the Adige. They've all got fairly similar growing conditions, and it produces a really interesting style of wines that are very perfect food wines that are quite sort of light and really tasty and really versatile and brilliant everyday drinking. So that's one of the aspects I wanted to sort of bring out as much as I could.
Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Mama Jumbo Shrimp.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Amarone gets a lot of the publicity. Amarone, of course, being a passito wine from dried, not fresh grapes, a method that goes back to antiquity.
Absolutely. Pre-Roman times.
The Greeks certainly. And yet, as you say, Amarone itself, as we know it, is really recent.
Very recent in the greater scheme of things, as I said, really more than the Second World War. It was probably its history dates back a little longer than that, to the, I would say, end of the 19th century, when people began to experiment with a drier style of recioto, because recioto has been around forever. But that was interrupted by a sequence of events. Obviously, the arrival, first of all, of phylloxera, then 2 world wars, obviously brought an end to that experimentation. It was only after the end of the Second World War that people sort of took up the baton again, if you like, and started experimenting around with what you could do with wine from semi-dried grapes that was fermented up to full dryness.
Sure. So, we have the Recioto, from the Recce, the ear of the bunch. And as you say, that's the sweeter style with residual sweetness staying. To create a dry style, was that partly a question of a yeast that was strong enough to survive?
That's a very good question, because a lot of yeast will sort of stop working at certain alcohol levels. But if you talk to a lot of people who can remember that far back, they will insist that the idea of Amarone developed as an accident more than anything. A barrel of recioto that had been perhaps neglected and had fermented out to dryness, as it will do, obviously. And there are very particular yeast strains that will sort of carry on operating at up to, say, 16.5% alcohol. And the popularity, along with the popularity of Amarone, goes hand in hand with the fact that these particular yeast strains have been developed in order to complete the fermentation of these wines to the sort of alcohol levels we see in Amarone today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Michael, let's talk a little bit now about Tria, your wine company, your specialist Italian wine company here in the UK, and also about the challenges of selling quality Italian wines in the UK market, the challenges of wines that are primarily wines that are great food wines, as we've discussed,
Sure.
in a culture where wine is often drunk in a different way.
Yeah, there certainly are challenges. Tria Wines, Paul Merritt, the guy I wrote the Barolo book with, is actually my business partner in Tria Wines. We've been going for 20 years now. And our idea was just to try and sort of offer a streamlined service to people. And that idea has sort of evolved over the last 20 years to what it is today. And today, Tria Wines, really, we operate in a very sort of particular way. We're an ex-seller selling company only, so we don't have stock in the UK. We sell to people who are interested and large enough to be able to sort of ship themselves from Italy. We work with a small handful of producers whose wines we know and love and have come to trust over the years. And so our main customers are people like Waitrose. We sell quite a lot of wine to Waitrose because they're big enough and have systems that are well managed enough to be able to sort of look to ship decent quantities out of Italy.
Which of your wines would be in Waitrose? I might be able to find.
You can find them. You can certainly look for them. And from Verona, for example, there's the Waitrose Ripasso, the number one Ripasso that they do, which I help out with that. And also their Bardolino from Verona is from a producer that I have an association with. And funnily enough, Waitrose are just about to launch a new Amarone, their new Amarone. And that, again, is something I've had a hand in. So
wonderful. I'll look out for those.
The Verona, the new label, it's going to be their kind of their main Amarone rather than one of the small parcels. The regular Amarone is a wine that I've developed with them over the past couple of years, because I've been working with this particular producer and Waitrose for a number of years now. And things are going really well. And we're looking forward to the new Amarone, which will be launched at the end of this month, beginning of August.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Look out for
it. Yeah. Do you work with restaurants as well?
No, we work with a few distributors too.
Of course,
who's what they buy from us ex-sellers and will distribute to restaurants. But no, we're too small to be able to work with individual restaurants, Mark. So we look to sort of work with distributors who will. So
sure.
As I said, we try and operate a very streamlined system.
Have things become more complicated after the dreaded B word, Brexit?
Well, yes, the dreaded B word, the awful B word. I hate mentioning that word.
I'm sorry.
Of course, things have become a lot more complicated. But everything has been a bit strange recently because of the pandemic.
Of course.
And things are in flux. And I think they're beginning to sort of settle down again now. But the aftermath of the dreaded B word is still to be resolved. It's still making our lives so much more difficult.
Yeah, it's such an unnecessary.
Totally unnecessary. Don't get me started.
Or me. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
now, finally, Michael, I just want to, since we're both here in Devon, I just want to touch on English wine and in particular Devon wines and what you think of some of the, there's been an amazing amount of vineyards planted just here in Devon with some surprising results.
Yeah, both Devon and Cornwall, obviously, as well. There's a lot happening down there in the West Country and all along the South Coast. And there've been some There's some tremendous wines available now, not just the sparkling ones, and we have the reputation for that now, because there's a bit of a track record there. We've been producing really good, what I suppose we should refer to as champagne method wines in the south of England for a number of years that have been getting rave reviews. But there are some really good still whites now, I think good prospects for reds. I think we will probably capable of making some really good Pinot Noir down here, for example. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, it's still an industry in its infancy, but with tremendous prospects. As long as the climate change that is facilitating that doesn't accelerate too rapidly, which could be a worry a bit further down the line.
Sure, I know it's a worry already for many Italian producers.
Of course, it's a huge worry, and I'm not. Yeah, it's very serious. It's quite grave in my view. It's a bit of a sad note to end on this, isn't it? But
well, let's end on a happy note. I mean, I hope it's a real pleasure to meet you in this way, Michael. We're not very far apart, and I think the next time we meet must definitely be over a glass of wine.
I'll hold you to that, Mark, and hope that it happens very soon.
Yeah, let's hope and try to make it happen soon.
Okay, let's do that.
Thank you very much for being my guest today. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
I hope so. The pleasure's all mine, Mark. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls series that highlights the trophy-winning wineries and the stories behind their bottles. We hope you will join me again next week for another installment.
Guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.